Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Half Court Press podcast. I'm Jon Walker. He's Wilson Moore, and we're back with some more ball because they're still playing. We've still got teams playing, man.
Yeah.
We've got one headed to the off season and one that's in Detroit, which is where I am. And yeah, we should have a heck of an episode in store for you. Wilson, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Yeah, still adjusting to past couple days of it not being basketball season, at least for me.
Yeah.
It's now portal season, which is not as much fun as basketball season. But yeah, got back from Memphis a couple days ago. Had, at least a couple days of things being a little more, a little slower, but again, portal season, so it all comes out in a wash. What relative to you, it was slower because I did not have to get on another plane to go to another city 3 days later.
Yeah, so I tweeted about it because I was so relieved to hear them say, please cram your bags in, or we might have to have some people check the bag. Our flight's full. I walk all the way to the back, 19A, and there's nobody in my row. And I was like, thank goodness. I did not know what I did to deserve that, but I'll take it, man. So yeah, pretty smooth sailing on the way to Detroit. And we'll see what happens here.
Yeah.
So, well, let's start with Nebraska because obviously we're gonna have a lot to talk about with Creighton over the next couple of days. Looking forward to the next couple of days, but let's go back a week. Nebraska first NCAA tournament appearance in a decade, and Wilson, it did not quite go how the Huskers wanted it to in Memphis.
It did not, no. It started out well for Nebraska. Tominaga hit some early threes. Bryce Williams hit a three, and it was loud there in FedEx Forum. There was a healthy contingent of Nebraska fans down there. Actually, the next night, in a bar, a guy who goes to a different location. We're getting real anecdotal here. Told me he had never seen. Every year he goes to a different city for that weekend, and he told me he had never seen another team's fan base take over a building like Nebraska did the other day, except for Indiana playing in Lexington, Kentucky was the only other example. So to
That'll
give
do
you a
it.
sense of the noise level, yeah. Fred Hoiberg post game called it PBA South. It was a real atmosphere, but then the game continued to progress, and the crowd grew a bit quieter. They
Will we say that they grew a bit quieter, or that Texas A&M Wade Taylor in particular quieted them? Were they
yes,
were they were they
the
silent or were they silenced?
silenced would be a good way of putting it. Yes. Wade Taylor, Manny Obaseki, Tyrese Radford, uh Texas A&M just played really well, which is not to say there weren't things Nebraska couldn't have done better. Nebraska didn't shoot the ball especially well. Nebraska certainly didn't play defense, I think, as well as we have seen them at points this season. But Texas A&M played a really, really good game. This is a team that did not shoot especially well from 3 point range throughout the season. They did in the last 6, 7 games of the year. They came out just stroking it right away. Wade Taylor, I think, hit five in the first half, 5 or 6 of it, I think. And that really, because the whole narrative going into the game was Texas A&M is going to do what Texas A&M has done all season. They're going to hit the glass. They're going to grab offensive rebounds. They're going to be fit. They're going to be physical, and Nebraska is going to be the better shooting team. And when Texas A&M starts matching Nebraska shot for shot, and then the Huskers go cold, it's kind of okay. That's a major advantage on paper Nebraska had that has now been taken away, and you just saw it. Texas A&M played really well, and you saw it 2 days later when they almost beat Houston in round two. Certainly
Yeah.
hung with them better than a lot of teams have stayed with the Cougars this season. It's a very good team. They kind of dominated on both, like on every part of the court. And especially in the second half, they're getting offensive rebounds, and Nebraska's perimeter defenders just couldn't stay in front of Obaseki and Radford. They were driving to the basket, getting to the rim without a whole lot of out a whole lot of resistance, and Nebraska, even in the second half, Nebraska made shots, but just couldn't get enough stops to ever really make it competitive over the last 25 minutes or so.
Yeah. That was the most interesting thing to me is we all knew that A&M was probably the more athletic team. You could look at the tempo stats and see that they want to run down up and down the floor. But I was surprised how easily they would run a simple screen and have a
Yeah,
wide open drive to the lane. That was nuts to me because we've seen Nebraska be so good defensively at times this year,
yeah,
even when their offense has not been clicking. So then to have that performance on that stage, that was probably the tough part, knowing that, one of the things they hung their hat on at multiple different points this season just kind of vanished when they needed it to the most.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. I think regarding Creighton and Nebraska, that Nebraska, especially over the last 6 or 7 games of the regular season, proved it could win a mud fight. That it could win games when it wasn't making a ton of 3 pointers, and that was the kind of, against a gritty physical team like Texas A&M, that was the kind of performance they needed. And they just didn't have it. Like Jawan Gary, Bryce Williams are both proved themselves over the course of this season to be really solid perimeter defenders. Gary, I think is one of the better defensive players in the Big Ten, and they just but it was a committee effort, and just nobody could stay with Texas A&M out on the perimeter. You're
I was muted. I yeah, that was I don't know because it seems like they never made an adjustment to it either.
Yeah,
Like the things that A&M did in the second half to kind of keep it at 20 were the same things they were doing before halftime.
yeah.
And I would love to know how much of the plan changed or what the plan was. Bless you. As
Thank
soon
you.
as as soon as Wade Taylor started hitting from outside, because the whole philosophy. I'm assuming here, the whole philosophy was probably okay. This team doesn't shoot really well from three. Based on their season averages, they don't shoot it well out there at all, right? And so we'll run them. We'll sit back and we'll keep him from driving to the basket. Well, then he comes and hits five himself in the first half, and it's like, okay, well, we obviously cannot sit back. And yeah, so I don't know if they were just trying to run him off the line and then not adjusting to things inside once they got by him, but that was probably the most surprising thing to me is that A&M just took it at Nebraska, possession after possession to the rim. Really for what 40 minutes, 35 minutes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Um, so yeah, that was the tough part, man. But I still think people probably don't want to hear this, and that's okay. But if you make your first NCAA tournament appearance in a decade, you're doing something right.
Oh yeah,
And so that's a good building block for them. They only lose two seniors in what Alec and Tominaga.
yeah, yeah. And
Um,
uh,
so, so
and
so
and your and Boogie Coleman, but yeah,
yeah, so they'll return a bulk of what their core, I guess, except for the ones who have already entered the transfer portal,
yeah.
which I'm assuming we'll hit on here in a second. But still, I mean, you can't hang your head. I know it didn't end the way they wanted it to, especially in that fashion. But they still made the tournament, and only 68 teams do so. And so I think they can hang their hat on that going into the off season. But then you kind of have an expectation going into next year. Hey, we obviously saw that we can get to the tournament. Let's get back there. I'm assuming will be, Hoiberg's message through the off season.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see, man. I don't know. Did not end the way they wanted it to, or that any Nebraska fan wanted it to, obviously, but a good stepping stone for the foundation that they kind of laid this season with Fred Hoiberg.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you're right about, the off-season message, the goals. Hoiberg said that up at the podium. Basically, he said that it can't be another decade between NCAA tournament appearances. This has to be a building block. This has to be a springboard for the future. And I think they're in good position to do so, assuming everyone who has eligibility and who hasn't entered the portal to this point comes back. They'll have a pretty solid core. Like yeah, Alec and Tominaga are gone. They're gonna hit the portal for replacements because that's what this Nebraska team does. That's what this program does. They build through the portal. So they'll be active over the coming weeks. And to your point about it's not how Nebraska fans wanted it to end, but it was a successful season. I think Sam Hoiberg summed it up pretty perfectly in the locker room when he said, I'm paraphrasing he said, in a week or two, I'll, kind of look back on this with some greater perspective and uh appreciate appreciate it for what it was. But
Right.
right now, and he's saying this, 15 minutes after the season ended, like now it's just anger and frustration for the time being.
That's the positive thing that you can take away from that, though, is that they were angry, they were frustrated.
Yeah,
This wasn't a team that was happy just to make it into the tournament.
exactly. Yeah.
They wanted the tournament win. They wanted to be
Yeah.
the group to get the tournament win for Nebraska. And so, that frustration, that anger is a good thing, I think. And yeah, obviously he couldn't in that moment. That's kind of why we hop on here and go back and forth, because we can just give that perspective of, that's one of those things that Nebraska can be proud of. But again, there's new expectations now, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have to, people see that you can get to a tournament. They want to get back to the tournament.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, especially in the Big Ten going a little bonkers next year with the addition of some schools.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'm not sure. It'll be kind of moving on to the Creighton side. It'll be an antsy 48 hours for the Jays, I think. Late Friday tip off again. Rest in peace, my deadline. For the second week in a row.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you
But
even like we can get to this, but what did you do for that the
yeah,
double
yeah, yeah,
overtime game? What how did
yeah. So our desk was, I've been talking to Kristen. Shout out Kristen and Josie. We just kind of, I messaged Kristen earlier in the day and I said, hey, with them having a second game, like, what do we do if the first game goes to, and then I put in parentheses, I won't say it. I said, or if the Creighton game does. And she said, well, we'll just hope the basketball gods don't hate us. And yes, I'm messaging her, all throughout the second half. I'm like, okay, like, what are we doing? And long story short, they were able to hold the pages. So as soon as the game ended, filed something, bang, that was it. But yeah, they were cool enough to hold the pages, thankfully. But it was a doozy. Um, it was something, that is for sure. And I'm assuming we'll do it all again on Friday night. I'm already in Detroit. It's a 10 p.m. local tip,
oh God,
9 p.m. Central.
that shouldn't be allowed. 10
It
p.m.
should,
local time.
and that's hoping that the Purdue Gonzaga game goes to plan. So we'll see what happens. It'll be another late night on Friday, but it's going to be an INC 48 hours because this is, I know Oregon was good and gave them a run, but I think Tennessee is easily the best team that they'll see in the tournament so far. I mean, they're the SEC champs. They have Dalton Knecht, the SEC Player of the Year. Zakai Ziegler, the SEC Defensive Player of the Year. I mean, this Tennessee team it's got some dogs on it. So we'll see how that plays out for Creighton. Um, but one of these two teams is gonna kind of continue to break a stigma, if you will. Like Creighton is going to continue to prove it's a contender and get back to the Elite Eight for a second time in 2 years. And we all kind of know the woes around Tennessee. I mean, you went to Mizzou. You're an SEC guy at heart. You know the narrative around Tennessee.
Right.
They're super good. Sure, they win in the regular season. They can win the league. They can be the number 2 team in the country entering the tournament, and people would still pick them to lose in the Sweet 16 because of their history under Rick Barnes. And so one of these two teams is kind of gonna break a stigma, I guess, or in Creighton's case, double down on it. But that's kind of what's hanging in the balance. Oh, and there's a trip to the Elite Eight on the line. So that's kind of what these two teams are going to be worried about on Friday night.
Yeah. I'm really interested in just seeing how this game plays out because it strikes me as two teams with pretty similar styles. It's two teams that like to go. It's teams that can shoot it from three really well. So I think we're gonna, seems to me they play a similar game, and whoever plays that game best, obviously, well, you know, is the one who wins. No one's, it's not going to be like Nebraska and Texas A&M where one is trying to pull the other out of a comfort zone. They are both going to
Yeah.
do what they want to do.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. And we had Creighton availability on Monday, the day after they got back from Pittsburgh, and just talking to them, the immediate thing that stood out to everyone that I talked to was Tennessee's defense. I mean, like you said, Zakai Ziegler, SEC Defensive Player of the Year. They are third in the country at adjusted defensive efficiency, only behind Houston and Iowa State. That's good company to be in. And that was Creighton's biggest takeaway was that, they're rugged defensively, and we're going to have our hands full on that end. I think they'll defend Tennessee just fine, if I'm being honest. Greg McDermott does a really good job at putting together a scouting report. His staff, they do a really good job at putting together an effective scouting report, and the players do a really good job of following it. Now, will that change if I don't know? Will that change if Tennessee comes out and hits 5 threes? Yeah, probably. But I'd like to think that going into the game, the scouting report is to they'll probably put either Trey or Baylor on Dalton Knecht.
I was going to ask who guards Knecht from Creighton.
Yeah, I think they're going to switch, and if I was Rick Barnes, I'm going to switch early, and I'm going to try and get Alexander on Dalton, and I'm going to try and get Shireman on Dalton because I want to see what matchup works better in my favor. So I think they'll switch on the first few possessions or try and get Creighton to switch and just kind of pick and poke at what matchup they want to use Dalton Knecht with. But at the end of the day, for me, it really comes down to how well Creighton handles Tennessee's on-ball pressure. They've smothered teams at different points this year, and especially in the tournament. They didn't play, Creighton fans saw this with the Jays last week, but much like Creighton, Tennessee didn't play well offensively last week and still won. You could say the same about Creighton in that Oregon game. I think they started 1 of 11 from 3 or something like that. The encouraging thing is that this team hit 10 of its final 19 from outside. So, they can get going, as we all know. But that's what it comes down to for me is how well Creighton can handle Tennessee's pressure. We've seen that fluster them at times this season. I think of the Providence game in the Big East tournament. They just hard hedged everything. and were athletic enough to recover if they got out of rotation. And I think Tennessee has a little bit of that too. So that's what it'll come down to for me is Creighton being comfortable in with that pressure, and then obviously not turning it over, because the last thing you want to do in a game like this is give away free possessions. So
Yeah. Just to go backward a little bit because we only
yeah,
barely
yeah, yeah.
touched on this, and I think it deserves a little more than what we gave it. Creighton and Oregon, the Dana Altman Bowl, double overtime. I mean, probably the
It
best game of the tournament thus far, right? I mean,
yeah. Yeah, I would think so. The only one that would no, I don't think there's one that's close. I mean, you could say that A&M Houston game because he hit that buzzer beater to send it to overtime, and but that was the first double overtime game in the tournament, excluding first four games, I think since 2016.
wow.
So I'm almost positive it's since 2016. And so yeah, we're talking about like a generational March Madness game almost. Um, it was nuts, man. It was so nuts. It the first overtime kind of feels like a blur. The only thing I really remember from it is Jermaine Couisnard's three to tie it and send it to a second overtime. And then that was it. I mean, Creighton took off. Oregon was gassed. Creighton made a change to slow down and Fale Dante and Couisnard, and away the Jays went. Stephen Ashworth hits a three. Ryan Kalkbrenner, of all people, hits a three. And I say of all people, like he's a bad shooter. He passed on the exact same shot at the end of regulation with like 3 or 4 minutes left. And I asked him about that in the locker room. I was like, you hesitated on that exact same shot and then gave it up. And he was like, yeah, I was kicking myself for it. So I knew if I was in the position again, I was going to pop it. And he did. And that was kind of the dagger. Um, I think Oregon was probably like, dude, he's torched us inside, and now he's gonna step out and pop. Like, yeah. I think that was probably the like fear factor in going into Oregon. And then it was over on the next possession when Jason Green threw down the putback. Um, yeah, man, nuts tournament game. Um, I think Ryan Kalkbrenner told me there won't be another game like that this tournament, and there might not be another game like that next tournament.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good. It was a damn good game for March Madness. It was the kind of game that defines this time of year. It's why people tune in. It's why people stay up until 11, whatever, just to watch a basketball game because of moments like those
Yeah.
and games like those. So yeah, man, it was unreal. It was nuts. I'm hoping we get a maybe not double overtime, but I'm hoping we get another good one on Friday.
Yeah. Double overtime, 10 p.m. local start.
Yeah, let's not. How about? Oh my man. Let's touch on this real quick before we hop off of here because it's obviously important. It's portal season. Nebraska's already
Portal
had a few
season.
into the portal. If you would enlighten us on on who they've lost so far, and maybe just early indications of some of the people that they've reached out to.
Yeah, yeah. So far, three have entered the portal, and that is Ramel Lloyd Jr., Blaze Cada, and Eli Rice. Um, Lloyd spent 2 years at Nebraska, redshirted his first year, did not play, did not see action in his second year. He injured his leg early in preseason practice, kind of spent the year bouncing on and off the injury report, and just never really got going. Just didn't, just didn't work out for Lloyd, who was a fairly highly regarded prospect. I think he had an offer to Kansas when he come in to Nebraska, but just his Nebraska career just never really got going. Blaze Cada, another guy who was bitten by the injury bug. His was a weird situation because he hurt his ankle in February of 2023. And he had surgery over the off season, and I guess it just never progressed to the point, how it should have, how he and Nebraska were hoping it would. He also didn't play. Like if he had, he would have been a kind of, protect the rim, get some rebounds kind of guy. He would have added some size, a little, some defensive pop, but just another guy who didn't, couldn't catch a break, especially last season. It was a strange progression because I don't think his ankle ever progressed the way like the coaching staff expected or hoped it to. Um, that every once in a while we'd get an update from Fred, and it was always just more of, he's working, he's rehabbing. We'll see how it goes. And Keita did suit up quite a bit at the end, but never. He was always a kind of break glass in case of emergency guy. Never really got to a point health wise where he could have played significant minutes. And then the third is Eli Rice, who once again, guy missed some time with injury. But he
That was
played.
the shocker, though, right? That was a
Yes,
bit of a shock.
yeah, because he really showed flashes as a freshman. And he was a real candidate to take a step forward, to be a guy who really contributed in his second year because there was enough, there were enough signs in his freshman year that made you say like, okay, this guy can be good if he isn't already right now. Rice came off the bench when the team was really flat against Iowa, scored 9 points in the first half. He was a guy. He was kind of an instant offense guy. His what got him on or kept him off the floor was always going to be defense, but he was a guy who could come in, hit a shot, knock down 3 pointers, get a big three against Michigan State back in December that Nebraska badly needed. But yeah, he was a guy who I was really interested in his development, just seeing what the next step for him was. But whatever that is, it will be somewhere other than Nebraska.
Yeah, that's do they have any early indications of people they've reached out to? Like Creighton's reached out to a few. That's kind of the benefit that they've had of not playing until Friday this week is they've been able to reach out to some. Like they reached out to Terrence Edwards Jr. from James Madison, Keyshawn Hall from George Mason. They're looking for those athletic wing guys or athletic guards who can handle the ball a little bit, maybe play a little bit of combo. And obviously we're talking about Creighton here, so they have to shoot well.
Yeah.
That's why they've reached out to a guy like Dante Maddox from Toledo. I think he averaged 16 points this year, and more importantly for Creighton, he's a career 40% three shooter. So those are kind of the I'd be remiss. I'm so sorry, Dylan. Thank you so much. I'd be remiss if I did not mention Frankie Fiddler was at Creighton practice on Monday. He stopped by. So no, he was not playing scout. He was not Dalton Connect. I saw a couple of people say, "Man, what if he's just helping them scout?"
That
That
would
is an
be fun.
NCAA
I'm assuming
violation.
it's against the rules, but that would be kind of
Yeah,
fun.
no, it absolutely would be. But he, this team's going to lose Baylor Shireman. Creighton fans have at max, less than 2 weeks of Baylor Shireman left, which is that sounds weird to say, given how much he's kind of meant to the program since transferring in before last season. But they've slowly started to reach out, and you see that in who they've already reportedly contacted. They want a Fiddler type esque, a 6'6", 6'8" guy who is what we'd consider a true swingman. They want him to be able to play a 4 in a smaller lineup. They want him to be able to play the 3 in a bigger lineup. And that's kind of one of the commonalities we've seen through all the people that Creighton have reached out to so far.
Yeah, and on the Nebraska side, there hasn't The one that stands out to me that Nebraska's reportedly been in contact with is William Kyle III from South Dakota State, trying to get a guy
Yeah.
to follow the Baylor Shireman pipeline of from Nebraska to South Dakota State back to
Yeah.
Nebraska. Um, and you see him, and Fred has said he said a few weeks back when the season is still going on, someone asked him about the portal, and he said, we're going to be looking for size, because Josiah Alec was obviously a big part of things.
Yeah.
He's gone, and they're looking for someone who can provide what he provided, which was defense and rebounding and intensity and hustle and athleticism, and
Yeah.
that's what William Kyle has. He's um I I didn't can't say I watched a ton of South Dakota State basketball this year, but just looking at highlights of him, looking up some videos, he seems to be he's 6'9", he seems to be a uh real springy 6'9", kind of well built, but can also get up off his feet. So I think he's a guy who just makes sense in a lot of ways for Nebraska. He's a local kid. He's from Omaha.
Didn't get booed at
He
PBA.
didn't get booed at PVA. Yeah, so yeah, fan base does not have any pre-existing judgments against him. um,
I
but
I checked while you're talking about William Kyle, I checked I feel like usually if you have a local kid like that, we've seen, the oh, he's been contacted by, we've seen those feature Creighton and Nebraska. They usually both
yeah,
try and get in on those local kids. I checked yesterday and Creighton hadn't reached out to William Kyle. So that was interesting to me. I don't know if that's changed, in the 24 hours since then. But when I kind of sniffed around yesterday, they hadn't contacted him yet. So yeah, we'll see, man. But
yeah,
that would be obviously big for Nebraska as an immediate kind of plug and play Alec replacement.
yeah. And yeah, he also just
So
he fits kind of the archetype of who Nebraska has gotten the past couple of years. Sam Griesel, Emmanuel Bandamel, Reek Mass, Bryce Williams, Josiah Alec, all guys who played at mid-major schools, kind of late developers, mid-major out of high school, continued to improve, continued to get better, and then got to a point of being able to, compete at a Big Ten level. Nebraska has been all over those kinds of guys, and William Kyle fits that profile.
yeah, he for sure does. And that's kind of why I thought Creighton would go after him. Honestly, I think they want an athletic four. We've seen that position kind of be the weak part of their lineups at times. We've seen matchups where I don't know if it's UConn and they go with Donovan Clingan and Samson Johnson, two pretty. We all know Donovan Clingan. Samson Johnson's like a 6'10", 6'11" forward who could play center on most teams. And no knock to Mason Miller, but his frame is just not, it does not favor Creighton in those types of matchups. That's why we see Jason Green come off the bench and play the four in spurts. That's kind of why we've seen their small lineup feature Isaac Trout at the five instead of Fred King or whatever it might be. So I thought they'd for sure be in a William Kyle just position wise, but I guess not. We'll see.
Yeah. Now, just to
Listen,
close this, I
oh,
was
go ahead.
thinking, putting you on the spot here. Creighton has a pretty big game coming up. What is your prediction for Creighton versus Tennessee?
Okay, so I genuinely believe this. Genuinely, like I'm not just saying this because I cover Creighton. I genuinely believe that if they hit their shots early and force, they move the ball as well as anybody. Teams say, let's turn a good shot into a great shot. Creighton does it. Yeah, possession after possession. They try and turn a good shot into a great shot. And I think if they can hit some of those and get Tennessee out of rotation early, then that pressure will soften a bit. But if they start 1 of 11 from 3 again, Tennessee is going to be up in their grill, as as you should be. Oh, you already have doubts about your shooting? Perfect. Let's pressure the mess out of you and let's get you to turn it over a couple of times. But I genuinely think that if Creighton plays its game, that that the Jays win. I really do. I think in my scouting report, I said 76-70. That's just kind of what called out to me. No clue why. Kind of, yeah. Oh, yeah. So Ken Palm has Tennessee winning 73-71.
Right.
ESPN has Tennessee's win probability at 58.7. So the Jays are a bit of an underdog in this matchup. I can see why. I'm not saying that's wrong, but I really think that if Creighton kind of plays its game, that the Jays will, be hanging around Detroit for a couple more days and get one of Purdue or Gonzaga, two opponents that present their own challenges and two opponents that present some pretty darn good storylines. It would either be Ryan Kalkbrenner on Zach Edey, or it would be Creighton versus Ryan Nembhard in the Elite Eight. So, all things considered, I think Creighton wins. Yeah, I just really, I don't know. I think Creighton, I hope Creighton has learned from the on-ball pressure. We've seen it kill them at times. UNLV pressured the mess out of them in Vegas, won by 15 or whatever it was. Villanova, Marquette at the beginning of conference play, they just kind of smothered them, forced them into 16, then 18 turnovers in back-to-back games. It's no coincidence Creighton lost both of those. And so I think if the Jays handle the pressure early, they'll be fine. Wilson, you got anything else, my man?
I don't know that I do. Just yeah, I'll be watching. Uh
I
yeah,
hope it's another good one. I
me
hope it's
too.
another good one.
Hey
Yeah,
guys,
man.
real
That's
quick.
gonna wrap.
Hey, real quick here. This is your producer talking. So I got to give you guys some flack a little bit for we're talking predictions here. I really like the thoughts, some nice thoughts and everything, but where were you guys brackets in the Omaha World-Herald bracket pool this year? I didn't see him in there.
That is true.
Yeah. I would have been in last place anyways.
Yeah, I can tell you it wouldn't have been good if that helps.
No.
I just wanted to
No.
hear a little bracket update because we didn't get to
Yeah.
see where you guys were.
My winner is still in.
Yeah.
I had Purdue winning it
Purdue,
all.
okay.
My final four was Creighton, Kentucky, Baylor, UConn.
Okay.
And so Kentucky being out first round obviously got me. So
Baylor's out too. Yeah,
yeah.
Auburn killed me this year. Auburn shredded my bracket.
Yeah.
Thought that was the sneaky team to get to the Final Four, get past UConn, but it is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
I whiffed on all the conference champions, like Wisconsin and New Mexico. I was like, okay, they played well in their conference tournaments. These are teams playing their best basketball of the year right now. Feeling good about them. With NC State, I was like, okay, they just got the auto bid. It was a fluke. I got basically every one of those wrong.
Me too, I think. Those can always go either way. Either, you're on fire or you're tired. You just played 5 games in 5 days and then you're playing some more. So
Yeah. Yeah. I had James Madison in the Elite Eight, maybe.
nice.
I was just like, dude, why not?
Yeah, and
So
I
yeah.
got screwed over by McNeese State too.
Ah,
I believed in Will Wade and the guys.
Listen,
yeah.
Patrick McCaffrey just entered the transfer portal.
Yeah, I just saw that. How do you tell your dad? Oh,
That's an awkward talk
Yeah.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. Damn. Well, y'all, is that it?
Yeah, I just want to get some thoughts on your brackets, guys. But John, have a great week at the Little Caesars Arena.
Man, I'm gonna try. I don't know what I want. I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm ready for this whirlwind to be over. But then I'm also like, how cool would it be to go to Phoenix? So yeah, I don't know what I want. I think I've told myself that I'd love them to get to the Elite Eight and lose to Purdue in a heartbreaker.
Hey, the Big Ten
It's
needs
very specific.
Yeah. I was just like, what is the best ending to the season for everyone, me included?
there you go.
And that's what I landed on, is that this group makes it back to an Elite Eight, plays, one of the top 4 teams in the country, and just comes up oh so short again. Or yeah, let's go to Phoenix. There's no, but I don't want to go to Phoenix and they lose the Final Four. That would be worst case scenario.
That's a
That's
lot
what
of
I'm
hard.
saying. I think I'm just over 6 a.m. flights.
Which is a fair stance to have.
6 a.m. flights and 10 p.m.
Yeah.
tips. Not a great combination.
I'm telling you, you should put that on a t-shirt.
That is March Madness, though. All right, guys. Appreciate the time.
Yeah.
John, like I said, have a good
See
week.
y'all. I'll try.
Check in on all the coverage at omaha.com.